Howdy, I'm Gary, Dillon Precision's Human Manual. I'm going to show you the depth of our product line by demonstrating our metallic cartridge reloaders from our square deal handgun only machine up through our most progressive, the RL1100, and our case processor, the CP2000. This way you'll have a better idea of which machine best meets your needs. Dillon Precision does not offer a bottom end or entry-level machine. We have different machines that meet different reloaders requirements so that we have something to offer for everybody. Now the first machine I'm going to show is the Square Deal B. It's a compact 4-station progressive suitable for handgun calibers from 32 Smith & Wesson long through 45 Colt. Now the down and up motion of the handle causes the shell plate to rotate mechanically. So down, up, shell plate's rotated on the upstroke. Now you'll notice as you pull the handle down, this arm comes out towards you. That's the primer slide picking up a primer from the primer magazine. Then when you lift up on the handle, shell plate rotates, push forward, seat the primer into the case. The powder measure is case activated. This fail-safe rod does not activate the powder measure. The case pushing up on the funnel is going to cam the powder bar over to drop a powder charge, and the rod only functions to retract the powder bar to pick up the next charge of powder. Third station, you set a bullet on the case mouth, and that's where the bullet gets seated. Your machine is going to come with multiple bullet seating stems so that one of them will be a pretty close match to the profile of the nose of the bullet that you're using. So the fourth station is for a separate crimp on the cartridge. Now there's two styles of crimps. For a revolver cartridge, it does a roll crimp where the case mouth is physically curved into a cantilure or a groove in the side of the bullet to secure the bullet from moving forward under recoil. On a semi-auto cartridge, it does a taper crimp. A taper crimp is essentially resizing the top of the case mouth to squeeze the case against the sides of the bullet. And a taper crimp is done so that the bullet, when it hits the feed ramp and goes into the chamber, does not push the bullet back into the case. Different style of firearm mechanism, different style of crimp. And both are adjustable for degree by turning this crimp plug on the top of the tool head. Now the Square Deal B uses a proprietary drop-in insert type of die. Unlike the rest of our product line, it does not use the standard 7/8-14 threads, so you must use specifically Dillon Square Deal dies in the Square Deal B machine. Now, I'm going to run one case through each station just to show the individual steps. So the first station, we're going to take a piece of cleaned fired brass, insert it into the shell plate at the first station. As you pull the handle down, the case goes up. The sizing die is going to squeeze the case tight so that it fits into the chamber and puts pressure to hold the bullet in place and pushes the old primer out. Then you lift up, shell plate rotates the case to the next position, push forward on the handle, and that pushes the case down over the primer, seating the primer in the case. Now, the case is going to push up on this floating piston, activates the powder bar to drop powder charge. When you lift up, the fail-safe rod retracts the bar to pick up the next charge. Now, set a bullet on the case mouth, seats, separate crimp, and then from here, the loaded round is ejected out of the shell plate into the catch bin. So now, I'm going to load all four stations at the same time and actually load progressively so you can see how fast this goes. So case, resize deprime, prime, resize deprime, drop powder. So now, from now on, every cycle we're going to set a bullet on the case and put a piece of brass into the shell plate. Notice that the die straightens the bullet out before it seats it into the case. Seat, come up. So projectile, piece of brass, eject. So at this point, All 4 stations on our machine are loaded, so every time we cycle the handle, we're going to make a loaded cartridge. And for the typical user, that's going to get you a production rate of about 300 to 400 rounds per hour. So with an actual output of 300 to 400 rounds an hour, the Square Deal B will keep the average handgun shooter well stocked in ammunition. The Square Deal B is a really great choice. This is the RL550C. This is one of the most versatile machines in the Dillon Precision reloader lineup. It's a 4-station machine. The shell plate is manually indexed by pushing the sprocket clockwise. It will reload a wide variety of handgun and rifle cartridges from 32 ACP up to 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum in the handgun cartridges, and from 17 Hornet up to 338 Lapua, 460 Weatherby, 416 Rigby. So at the top end, you can accommodate the largest rifle cartridges used for sporting purposes. The average user is going to operate this machine at about 400 to 500 rounds an hour. It uses standard 7/8-14 reloading dies, so that if you're looking for a cartridge that Dillon Precision doesn't make dies for, you can find somebody else's brand of dies because they'll fit, they thread in, they adjust the same, they'll work just the same. In comparison, the Square Deal B is suitable only for the common handgun cartridges, and on the Square Deal B, the shell plate is mechanically advanced by cycling the handle. So on the 550C, downward handle motion moves the primer slide out, picks up a primer out of the primer magazine tube. You lift up, push forward on the handle, seat your primer. Your first station is going to resize and deprime the case, and then at the end of the upstroke, you'll push forward to seat the primer. Then you manually advance the shell plate to the second station. The powder measure is case activated. The case is going to push up on a piston inside of this die, and that's going to activate the powder measure to drop powder. The fail-safe rod does not activate the measure. All it does is retract the powder bar to pick up the next charge of powder. Third station, you'll set a bullet on the case mouth by hand. When you pull the handle down, the bullet is seated. By adjusting the seating stem in the top of the die, you can infinitely adjust how deep the bullet is pressed into the case. Fourth station is for a separate crimp if it's necessary. Separate crimp is generally used if you're shooting your ammunition either through a tubular magazine like a lever action rifle, or if you're shooting it through a semi-automatic firearm. The crimp keeps the bullet from being pushed back into the case. Finally, when you advance it again, the loaded cartridge hits the ejector wire, comes down the chute, lands in the bin. So let me demonstrate it with just one case first at each station. Now with rifle brass like 223, you need to lube your cases first so that they don't stick in the sizing die. Handgun brass, if it's a carbide die, it's less important. Lubing your brass does make it easier to cycle the handle, but it won't cause the case to get stuck up in the die. Now if that does happen to you, the Dillon rifle dies do have a built-in stuck case remover, so you don't have to use a drill and a tap and make a chocolate mess out of extracting the stuck case out of the die. So you slide the case into the shell plate, pull the handle down, resizes, deprimes. Spent primer drops into this cup, ends up dropping into this bin. Push forward on the handle, seat your primer into the case. Manually index it by pushing that sprocket clockwise 90 degrees. Next, case pushes up and you'll watch the powder bar go over. That drops the powder charge through the funnel into the case. The fail-safe rod retracts it. Again, rotate it, set a bullet on the case mouth, seats it, index it, crimp, and then as I index it again, hits the ejector wire, goes down the chute into the catch bin. Now I'm going to show you how to run it progressively, so we're going to run cases in all 4 stations simultaneously. So again, case in the shell plate in 1, resize, deprime, prime. Advance, slide another case into the shell plate, handle down, drops powder. Press forward to seat the primer. Index, set a bullet on the case in 3. Seats the bullet, drops powder, picks up a primer. Prime, bullet, case. We're crimping our first round in station 4. We've dropped powder, seed the bullet, size deprime, prime. One of the other neat features of the 550C is that when you change from caliber to caliber, your dies stay in the tool head. So we're going to take the fail-safe rod off. That's detached. You lift out 2 pins. Tool head slides out. So when you're changing calibers, you're not having to recalibrate your dies and your powder measure each time. You just leave them preset and adjusted in their own tool head. There, and your top end is swapped. With the ability to load a wide variety of handgun and rifle cartridges, the Dillon RL550C is the most versatile reloader in Dillon Precision's metallic cartridge reloading line. This is the Dillon XL750. It's a very versatile 5-station reloader, able to load handgun cartridges from 32 ACP up through 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, and rifle cartridges from 17 Hornet up through 338 Lapua and the standard belted Magnums. Unlike the 550C, on the XL750, handle motion indexes the shell plate for you. For the average user, this machine will easily produce 500 to 600 rounds an hour. Add the optional electric case feeder, and that's going to put you up into the 800 to 900 round an hour range. Like the 550C, the XL750 also has a slide-out tool head. You can detach the fail-safe rod, lift out the 2 pins. The tool head slides out so your dies stay preset and adjusted. Then you just slide in your next tool head, reattach the pins, reattach the fail-safe rod, and the top end of the machine is ready to go, so you don't have to readjust your dies between caliber changes. The XL750 uses the industry standard 7/8 14 thread dies, so as long as your dies deprime in the sizing die, they will work in the Dillon XL750 machine. Now it's got 5 stations, so I'm going to show you first, running just one piece of brass through the machine, how each station operates. So we're going to drop a piece of brass into the tube. Now as you pull the handle down, this cam pushes this pivoting arm over, drops a piece of brass in front of this plunger. The upstroke, the shell plate rotates, keep pushing forward. That seats the case into the shell plate in the first station. Come down, first die is going to resize deprime, lift up, shell plate rotates, push forward on the handle, seat your primer. Now you'll notice that the handle motion is also going to make the primer slide come back, pick up next primer out of the primer magazine tube. On the second station, the case is going to push up on this floating cylinder, activates the powder measure to drop powder, and on handgun calibers it's also going to flare the case mouth out to make it easier to seat the bullet, especially with lead or polymer coated bullets. The fail-safe rod does not activate the measure. The case pushing up on the floating piston does. All the fail-safe rod does is pull the powder bar back, pick up the next charge of powder. The third station is open, and it's available. We offer a powder check die, which is a sensor, goes down into the case, and it checks the level of powder inside the case. It makes a most annoying buzzer sound when you don't have either too much or not enough powder in there. Optionally, you can add a Mr. Bullet feeder and it will drop a bullet onto the case here when you pull the handle down, which then gets us to the fourth station, bullet seating. Set a bullet on the case mouth, seat, index again, separate crimp, loaded round ejects down the chute and into a bin. Now that you've seen how each station works individually, I'm going to demonstrate loading it progressively. So we're going to fill up the shell plate, fill up all the stations, and show you how it really works. You pull the handle down, drops the case, push forward, seat the case into the shell plate. Resize D-prime, come up, push forward on the handle, seat your primer, case activates the powder measure to drop powder, fail-safe rod comes back, pulls it back. Station 3 is the open station. Station 4, set a bullet on the case mouth. Station 5, separate crimp. And our first loaded round ejected down the bin. So from now on, every time I cycle the handle, the machine is going to eject a loaded cartridge down the bin. And that's how you get to the 500, 600 rounds an hour or more out of the XL750. And that is how the XL750 works. So with an output of 500 to 600 rounds an hour or more, the ability to load the most popular handgun and rifle cartridges, the XL750 will easily meet the needs of the high volume shooters. While Dillon Precision does not have a bottom end reloader, we certainly have a top end reloader, and the RL1100 is the machine that fits that bill. It's a progressive 8-station auto-indexing machine capable of loading from 32 ACP up through 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum and handgun, and from 300 Blackout and 223 up to 6.5 Creedmoor and 308 in rifle. The typical operator will easily load 1,000 to 1,200 rounds an hour. Now this machine is different from the XL750 in that it incorporates a built-in primer pocket swager, which removes the crimp on US military boxer prime cases so that you don't have to process your brass for that as a separate step. Additionally, with the 8 stations, you're able to add more options to the machine. It's a shorter stroke, so it cycles faster. Now the tool head on this machine is held on by a large bolt. So to change out tool heads and leave your dies intact, simply remove that bolt. The tool head lifts off, and again, your dies stay set up and adjusted. The RL1100 uses standard 7/8-14 dies, so if you're loading a cartridge that Dillon does not make dies for, you can use another brand of dies on this machine. Now the RL1100 has a 2-year warranty. First, I'm going to demonstrate each individual position on the machine using just one piece of brass. Once we've gone through those, then we'll load it up and progressively load on it, filling all 8 stations on the machine. So first, piece of brass in the tube. When the handle comes down, plunger comes back, picks up a case, shell plate goes forward, shell plate indexes to the first station, resize D-prime. Handle comes down, pushes out the old primer, come up. Next station is the swaging station. This runs a swage rod up into the primer pocket to remove the crimp on boxer prime cases. At the same time, there's a rod that runs down to hold the case down in the shell plate so that you don't damage the rim of the case, or more importantly, don't damage the shell plate. Okay. Now we've advanced over here to the priming station. So when you pull the handle down, it seats the primer into the case. Because you're seating primers mechanically, you can use a wrench in the station between the sizing die and the swage backup die to mechanically adjust your primer seating depth so you can fine-tune it as snugly as you want. Okay. Case comes around to the powder measure. The powder measure is case activated. The case pushes up on a floating piston, activates the measure to drop powder, and on handgun calibers it also flares the case mouth. The fail-safe rod does not activate the powder measure. It only serves to retract the powder bar to pick up the next charge. So come down, powder bar comes out towards you, come up, fail-safe rod pulls it back. Now we're at the 6th station. The 6th station is normally empty, but you can add options such as this low powder alarm, which drops in on top of the powder charge, and if it's either too high or too low, it makes a real annoying sound to let you know that something is amiss. But for our purposes, we're going to pull this rod out because it's noisy. So, and optionally, you can add a Mr. Bullet feeder to this station as well. So now, come around to station 7, set a bullet on the case, it's seated. Station 8, separate crimp, then the loaded round hits the ejector and into the bin. So now that you've seen each station individually, let's load up some more brass and let's run it progressively for a few cycles. Alrighty. Down, case into the shell plate, resize deprime, swage, seat the primer, drop powder, powder check or bullet feed, bullet seat, separate crimp, on the upstroke, eject. At this point, every time you cycle the handle on the machine, it's ejecting a loaded cartridge. That's the low primer alarm telling me I'm down to 3 primers left in the primer magazine tube. High speed, low drag, top of the line Dillon RL1100 machine. This will keep any competitive shooter, machine gun shooter, or family of shooters well stocked in ammunition for years and years to come. This is the Dillon CP2000 case processing machine. It's not for loading ammunition, it's for prepping your brass to get it all ready to reload, which speeds up your reloading time and smooths everything out. It's an 8-station progressive, and it will process about 1,500 to 2,000 cases an hour easily. And it works for most common handgun and rifle cartridges. If you use it in conjunction with the RT1500 trimmer and a modified tool head, this machine excels at turning fired 223 brass into 300 blackout ready-to-load cases in one cycle through the machine. The CP2000 accepts standard 7/8-14 dies, so you can use pretty much anybody's dies on this machine for processing. Now the handle motion of the machine mechanically advances the shell plate. It also operates a primer pocket swager. Now the primer pocket swager can either be operated over here on the 3rd station or over here on the 7th station, so that maximizes your flexibility when it comes to setting up the machine for your particular needs. So now let's run just one piece of brass through, and you can see just how versatile this case processing machine is. So we're going to take one piece of brass, drop it in the case feed tube. Normally you would run the electric case feeder, fill a hopper about 1/3 full of brass, but it's awfully noisy. So we're going to skip that part. So when you pull the handle down, plunger is moved to the rear to pick up that piece of brass, pushes it into the shell plate. As you continue in the upstroke, the shell plate rotates to the 2nd station. Here we have a universal depriming die setup. Next, this is where you could either run the swager here or here, your option. So, station 4 is threaded for a 7/8-14 thread, so you can again adjust your flexibility. Station 5 is where we have our optional electric case trimmer set up. It spins at about 4,500 RPM and uses a carbide cutter, So it full length resizes the case, and it does an outside chamfer and deburr. And again, in the case of turning 223 into 300 blackout, it sizes the case down to 300 blackout length and trims off almost that ½ inch of excess brass. Station 6 is open. Again, you can configure the machine how you like. On this particular setup, we're running the swager at station 7, so we have the swage backup die. This holds the case down in the shell plate so the swage rod doesn't damage the rim of the case or damage the case by pushing it up through the shell plate. So you pull it down, swages. Station 8 again is open, it's your choice. Then the loaded round is ejected. So when you're running it progressively, there. So down, up, case into the shell plate, comes over, universal deprimer, swager if it's over here at 3, 4, trimmer mounted at 5, station 6 is your option, swage on here at 7, your choice at station 8, then the process case is ejected into the bin. So with an average output of 1,500 to 2,000 cases an hour or more of most rifle or handgun cases, the CP2000 will keep up with your processing needs. Do you need faster than that? Then add the optional DA3000 auto drive, and that will double your speed of output. Dillon Precision offers a full line of progressive reloading equipment to meet your individual reloading requirements. From our 4-station Square Deal B, which loads the common handgun cartridges at a production rate of about 300 to 400 rounds an hour, our most versatile machine, the RL550C, capable of loading the widest variety of handgun and rifle cartridges easily in the 400 to 500 round an hour range. The XL750, which can be equipped with a case feeder that will feed rifle as well as handgun brass and loads 500 to 600 rounds an hour or more once you add the optional electric case feeder. Our industrial machine, the RL1100, easily loads 1,000 to 1,200 rounds an hour of the most popular handgun and rifle cartridges. Finally, if you've got a lot of brass to process, say you're trying to make 223 into 300 blackout, the CP2000 case processor will process easily 1,500 to 2,000 cases per hour. Add the optional DA3000 auto drive to it, and you can double that output. Now you'll notice Dillon Precision does not offer a single stage press. The reason? It's real straightforward. Why spend the money on a single stage when the learning curve is going to be the same whether you're loading on a single stage or you're loading on a progressive machine? You're going to outgrow that single stage machine in just a few days, so why spend several $100s buying a single stage when you're almost immediately going to outgrow it? Dillon Precision has an answer for everybody's reloading requirements. Please go to dillonprecision.com, take a look. If you have any questions, call us, 800-223-4570. We're happy to answer any questions for you. Thanks. Adios.